Medical professionals of Reddit, what strange near-death experiences have you witnessed? We coded a approximately 50 lady in air for like 10 or 15 rounds once that was showing pulseless electrical activity. A rhythm where the heart is circulating almost no blood and essentially flatlining on the monitor, and the doctor running the code was about to call it. The people switching off on compressions were already starting to drip with sweat, and some were looking at him like, "You gonna call it or what?" After one nurse spoke up, he ordered one more round of epi and chest compressions and encouraged us to keep going. Probably already the longest code I had seen a doctor do without any reassuring results. Sure enough, she goes back into normal sinus rhythm after this last effing round, and we stabilize and ship her to ICU. 5 days later she comes back through air to thank us, speaking in clear, coherent sentences. I've never been much more shocked by a patient experience than to see this woman wheel back through the air looking like she had a minor bad day. Not only did I not expect her to make it out of the code, but I also didn't expect her to make it out of the ICU, as not many people in P for that long will. I think she was the only one I'd ever seen survive until discharge. And when she did, I sure as hell didn't expect her to have the energy to come back and visit us to expect gratitude. With no speech deficits or difficulty forming cohesive thoughts. This particular doctor was usually quick to call codes that seemed to be going nowhere, so I'm not sure what made him do things differently this day. But he must have seen something none of us did, and I'm glad he did. I haven't talked to him in years, but maybe I'll reach out to him and ask now that I'm talking about it. Edit. I texted him and asked what made him run that code so many times, and he said simply, "You just go off of your gut." So this is technically a near-death experience, I guess. A hospital I worked at used the mechanical compressors. So instead of people doing chest compressions, we would strap this machine on and let it do the work. It was actually pretty effective. Got called to a code. Patient was out. Strapped the machine on. Patient wakes up and starts yelling at us to stop. It hurts. Turn the machine off. Patient goes down again. Turn the machine on. Patient wakes up. We did this for what felt like forever. The patient, by the end, was crying and asking what was happening every time we started the machine. In the end, we were not able to save the patient. It still stands out as one of the most traumatic things I've seen, done in my 20-plus years of working in the medical field, and that includes working in big city trauma centers. When someone inadvertently hits the vagal nerve while repositioning an already sick. Also the patient who came in after an allergic reaction. Blue as shit and mottled throughout the body. Barely coherent. No CPR needed. Just drugs. 3 hours later returned back to normal color and talking and laughing with staff. Wild stuff. This was many years ago when I was a nursing student and working part-time at a hospital. A patient had really severe throat cancer, and one of the tumors eroded her carotid artery. Blood was, the only way to describe it, was just gushing out in a pulsing fountain. It took what seemed like hours. But somehow the doctors were able to close the hole long enough to get her into surgery. She lived a few more weeks afterwards. We were all just covered in blood. I went home in scrubs and just threw my entire uniform and shoes away. I'm not a doctor, but I am a lawyer. Former public defender. I had a client charged with assault with a deadly weapon. The guy my client shot went to the hospital and coded out in the ambulance. The doc testifying at trial said a cop had accompanied the victim and Ems to the hospital. The doc apparently went up to the cop and told him since they had several medical students observing at the hospital they were going to rotate them in and do another round of CPR for the experience. While the med students were doing the CPR, the guy came back to life and tried to get up from the table. I was an army medic, just home from Afghanistan, and I was in town to be with my grandfather as he passed. I was giving him some time to himself briefly and got a call to help him move from the toilet to his chair. When I scooped him from the toilet, he let out a gasp before coming to as I placed him on the couch. He then asked me for some tobacco. He started to doze off to what I thought was sleep. So I gave him a few more minutes of sleep. I went back about my business. Because my aunt was with him. While I showered I felt a rush as though someone was watching me. Immediately afterwards my phone rang. It was my aunt screaming, "He's gone." The near-death experience was when he came to after I lifted him off the toilet. He was barely hanging on. But he held on a bit longer. It was my first time witnessing agonal breathing. And the last time I visited that town, a decade ago in about a month. Saw a guy get hit by 3 cars. Get thrown into the air each time. Then run away. Saw a guy jump from the 12th floor. Land on wet grass. Only injury was he was winded. Saw a guy jump from a bridge. Land on a car. Only injury was jumper had a broken finger and car driver. Car completely caved in. Had a graze on the tip of his nose. Personal favorite. Had an arrest. Worked it for 30 minutes. Asystole throughout. Went to call it. It was midnight. So we did another minute to get to 001 as we couldn't agree what the date was. At 001 patient had return of circulation. By 030 they were conscious enough to know what was going on. 4 days later they were discharged with stents. Literally only alive because my idiot crewmate didn't understand that 000 is the start of the next day.